Greetings viewers and welcome to today's video info snippet where we will be covering user-defined fields within Sage 200 Evolution. Now, user-defined fields are very useful in setting up different characteristics within your database. User-defined fields can be linked to master files, documents headers, and document lines. So if you require, for example, reporting to be very precise in various categories, user-defined fields are really the way to go. Now, what we're going to be doing is setting up user-defined fields and then running reports and seeing exactly how you can customize reports to display those user-defined fields that you've set up. So we'll set up a user-defined field by going to Administration, System Configuration, User-Defined Fields. So obviously we're specifying that they're created under Administration menu, which ensures that only the admin user is able to go and edit and create those user-defined fields within the database. User-defined fields, and as you can see, we are able to go create various user-defined fields. As I mentioned, these include UDFs on customer master files, invoices, headers, invoice lines, etc. So as you can see there, we've got them under job cards, job card transactions, inventory documents, inventory lines, inventory headers, etc. So you are able to create them in a wide variety of places within your database. So I'm going to start off with firstly going to go create one under your inventory items. So let's just go find an inventory item there, and we're going to go add a user-defined field. So the important thing here is that when creating a user-defined field, it's going to go create a column, and it's going to go create the column name as a user-defined field. So I'm going to say, for example, classification. It's important to remember is that under the field name, there may not be any spaces, so it needs to be a full name. And then here, I can at least specify the description, item classification. So remember, no strange characters or spaces within the field name. Right. Now, we have got a couple of options or types of UDF fields that can be created, and these include the following: strings, integer, a double, a date, a true or a false, or a lookup. So let's just go check exactly what those fields entail. I'm simply going to use the F1 key, and I'm going to bring up our help file. And there I've got details of exactly what user-defined fields entail. So if it's a string, it's simply a text field between 1 and 250 characters. An integer is a numbers field with no decimals, up to 10 digits. A double are number fields which include decimals, up to 17 digits. Obviously, a date is a date field. True or false is going to be some form of checkbox. And then a lookup is just a lookup where you can make a selection with various options. Right, so I'm going to create two here. I'm going to create a string. And what we're saying here is that we're saying it's going to be a field size of 30 characters. Obviously, it could be increased depending on how many characters you want to insert within your user-defined field string. And what we can then do is say that we need to force the value. So it simply means is that, for example, if it's when on a master file, that when creating the master file, that the user-defined field must be completed in order for you to save the record. So we can say, for example, force the value, and if applicable, have some form of default value on that particular field. So I'm going to say, okay, there, string, 30 characters in size, I'm going to force a value, and this is going to be for inventory items. So there we go. I've now got my item classification, and what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to add an additional UDF, add button. This is going to be grading. And I'm going to say here, So in this case, it's going to be a lookup. And as you can see, I then need to specify my possible or potential values there and separate them by means of a semicolon. So I'm going to say, for example, first, second, change that. Right, so I've got my potential 4 values that I can use on my drop-down field for selection. And I'm going to make that a false value. There we go. No default value at this time. And I can then say OK to that. So obviously I could then go add the relevant number of UDF fields to my relevant stock items or my inventory items and specify the relevant information there. Now, if I say close there, you'll see what's going to be doing is going to start refreshing all the fields. It's going to be adding that column to the relevant tables and the views so that when viewing the reports, I can then obviously display those details there. Right, so now we're just going to go create a stock item and just see those options available. Right, so add my items. And what you'll notice is that when I open up my item, there's a section called additional fields. Right, so I've got my details there and additional fields. I've now got my 2 user-defined fields there available. So I'm going to say, for example, the classification. And then under my item grading level, I've got the ability to specify those options. Right, so I'm just going to say OK there. And as you can see, because I've set up my user-defined field to be a false value, I now am forced to go and insert an option there. So I'm going to say, right, there's the option. And there we go. Right, so as you can see, new item, I'm going to go add my additional fields there. And once again, I've got the ability to insert additional details of my UDFs on the item itself. Okay. Right, so that's simple enough. We're just going to go add some UDF fields onto our master file items. However, we're now going to go and create a UDF field for a document, which is very useful. For example, under credit notes, invoices, etc., you want to add some additional fields there. We can simply go add the field, and when processing the transaction, add those information. So back to administration, system configuration, user-defined fields, and let's just go, for example, to invoices. Add, and now I'm going to say, for example, so as you can see, once again, no character, no sort of spaces. And we're then going to have a string here and insert those details. As you can see, we're saying that we want to add information about the delivery vehicle registration. On deliveries, when we process an invoice, and I've got a false value there, so any invoice processed, I will have to insert those details. Obviously, if need be, I could also add that as a lookup field, and then obviously just insert the relevant options on my lookup values. Right, okay. Got the information there. Just tells you where the actual table that's going to be stored on. And I'm going to say close. As you see, we've got a refreshing of the views within the SQL database. So that information is then populated. Right, so let's just wait for that to refresh, and we're going to go process an invoice and see exactly how to insert those details on the UDF. Right, so we're now going to say transactions under inventory. We now have our inventory invoice. Right, so as you can see now, we've got a tab called additional fields, and we now need to go insert those details. Right, so I could obviously have additional fields there if I needed to, but that's how I use the defined field setup, and we're now going to go say process. I'm going to print the invoice. Right. So let's just go back a stage. I'm just going to, when I print the invoice, I'm just going to use the default layout. Okay, open up the document again. Find it. And let's just go and do a reprint. Right, so there's my invoice. Okay, at this particular point in time, we don't have the details available, which means we now need to go customize the layout to display the user-defined field. Right, so it's a really very simple process. It's a simple customization. So firstly, I'm going to go to my print options invoice, and layout options. So as you know, is that the blue options are the default layouts. So I'm simply going to go make a copy of it. Right, so I'm just going to, I've got my layout here, and as we know, is it's a two-phase process. We now need to go and specify a label, which is going to be the heading, and then also the particular field that must be displayed on the layout. So I'm going to go firstly to label, and I'm now going to go and add a label there. So because it's a document label, I'm going to put it somewhere on the header section. And now I'm going to say, give it a name. Okay, so I'm just going to place it somewhere visible and just go. Right, so there's the details there. And now I'm simply now need to go specify which particular field needs to be updated on this area. So I now need to insert a DB text field, which is a database text field. And I'm going to go place it go bring that field in there. Right, so there we go, drop and drag it. It's going to give me my DB text field number. And all I now need to go do is go specify exactly what field must be populated when printing the document. So we know that because it's a header, so therefore the user-defined field is on the header of the document, not on the lines. we go look for a field called PLINV number, which signifies the header of the invoice. And on the drop down, let's just go look for a field. Now remember is that user-defined fields will have a U prefix at the bottom. And as you can see, there's it. So what I'm saying, remember when we went to go and create that particular user-defined field, the prefix was UCL, and we then need to go specify the details. So there we go. And it's now linked to that field. So delivery vehicle registration, and we'll just go change the color. Right, I'm going to save this option and go close it. And now I'm going to go and say, let's just go reprint the document which has been customized, and we can display the user-defined field. Close that. I'm going to go open up the document, an existing one. Do a reprint with the new layout. And there we have it. So I've just gone to go add the vehicle registration details onto my invoice, and a very simple process of a customization. So as you can see, I can use, or I can create user-defined fields in various areas within my database. These include things like master files, documents, document headers, document lines. And if I go back to my administration, not only external documents, but also internal documents, for example, things like job cards, etc. I've got the ability to set them up under my fixed assets if need be, as well as various other information, for example, warehouse RBTs, etc. Even, for example, sales opportunities within my Salesforce automation. So as you can see, set them up wherever I need to. And let's just go back to our inventory items. Once again, if situations change, I can simply go into my UDF and go and change the description. Field name obviously won't be able to be changed as it's been updated within my SQL database. Descriptions I certainly can. If it's a lookup field and I need to make some changes there, I can simply go and add additional fields onto my lookups, and I can change the force value, etc. When it comes to things like an item classification, if it's a string, I can also go change the field size if required. So just a quick confirmation of that is that you've got those 6 options when it comes to user-defined field types: string, integer, and double, which are the numbers, the date, a checkbox, and lookup, and then obviously the string, which is a text field. So you decide which option you want to make use of with user-defined field. And then once again, the force value won't allow you to sort of update a record or process a transaction unless it's user-defined field as a force value has been populated. And then a simple process of just going to go, especially like for documents, just go and customizing the document layout so that you've got the user-defined field displaying there. Obviously, if you don't want those to appear, you can just populate them when processing the transaction and just use the standard layout when printing the document. So as you can see, user-defined fields very useful within your database, which allows you just to go and add additional fields from your master files, transactions, etc. That's a wrap from me. Thank you for watching. Over and out, and goodbye.